Excellent. So hello, welcome. My name is Raf. Actually, I will start sharing my screen so we can immediately see what we're going to do here today. So hopefully you can see my slides now. Excellent. Loading. There, yes, perfect. So welcome, Career Compass session. So obviously it's part of the L&D Shakers, L&D Shapers mentorship program. You see already problems with English. So we're going to talk about career goals, mentoring, and engagement, and mentoring progress. Heads up, this session and the way I always do it should be simple and should be practical and hopefully useful as well. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I will share the slides as a PDF just before we finish. So hopefully you can just relax, ask me a lot of questions, and you don't have to take notes. You don't have to take screenshots and worry about this kind of things. So before we jump into the content, what is going to be a structure? So we'll have very quick welcome introduction, then we focus on career goals, then we move into mentoring engagement, mentoring progress. We'll talk a bit, what's the summary, what are the takeaways from today. There will be a chance to ask questions if you have any, and there will be obviously thank you at the end, as we have around 55 minutes. The heaviest part, I'm not going to lie, is going to be on career goals. As I always say about mentoring, engagement, and progress, you will see that the framework and the ideas that I have are quite simple. So hopefully this will be something that you will not have to think like, oh, this is something I need to overcomplicate. And maybe why I am actually talking about this and who I am, because I think that none of you have ever met me before. So obviously I am a member of L&D Shakers, and I use this slide as me in 60 seconds, spot the difference. This is me before and after. So this is me in my corporate life at the top of the screen, and this is me after the corporate life. So I do have more than 15 years experience working in the corporations and have a global roles, work in corporate organizations, lived and worked across a few countries. Currently I live in Switzerland. I am an active person. I go to the gym, hike, run, bike, and walk. I love Japanese tattoos, dogs, music, good book. Currently reading Maybe You Should Talk With Someone by Lori Gottlieb. By the way, I very strongly recommend this book. Learning Spanish, planning to move to Spain. And probably the most important at the end, why actually I'm talking about this, is that I am a coach. I am a mentor. I'm a supervisor. I'm an author of a book as well. I'm a trainer and a teacher. And obviously I'm accredited by both IDCF in the MCC. And I spent a lot of years working, designing, development, and mentorship programs across various organizations in the world. This is just to give you an idea that hopefully I know something what I'm really talking about. So let's start with career goals. So you may be in different roles. Oh, great. I'm glad that someone already read the book. Sorry, I do get distracted, but that's, you see what happens. I always encourage you to use chat to let us know what you think, questions. Just use chat as a way of communicating as well. So career goals. If I ask you what career goal really means to you and what it is when you think about career goal, what would you tell me? Maybe we can play this little game. You will not have to. You can tell me, but I will also open a whiteboard so you will be able to drop a post-it note. And voila, it's opening. The book title is Maybe You Should Talk With Someone. Okay, so you should be able to see and access the whiteboard. If I tell you career goal, what is this? What it means to you? What challenge do you have? Anything that comes to your mind. So we have a comment in the chat, and I will paste them in the whiteboard as well. So feel free to use the chat if you feels more comfortable, or if you feel more comfortable, you can use the whiteboard as well. Career goal, what is that? So we have the path I would like to follow, navigation for my focus. Then we also have the learning. Then we have a direction and some personal milestones. Just like that. A moment when I have achieved something, next learning path I want to take, clarity. Oh, where's the link to the whiteboard? Okay, let me just, okay. So I'm just gonna share the link. And the link is now in the chat as well. So we have quite a few ideas here. So the path I would like to take, learning, the next learning path, a moment when I have achieved something in my career, work with a group towards a common goal, direction, and some personal milestones, clarity around the next milestone, individual definition of professional success. Love it. Maybe one more minute. There's no right or wrong, obviously. And what I can see here, specific long-term objective for professional career, navigation for my focus, and next steps. Super. 30 seconds more. Meaningful. I can see something starting with meaningful. Meaningful, getting bigger. What is the meaningful there? We're just waiting for the person to thinking and deciding. Okay. And let's see what's here. Achieving. Okay, perfect. So as you can see, career goals have, I would say, slightly similar, but slightly different meanings to all of you, each of you individually as well. And obviously for all of us as a group, it would mean something maybe different. So I'm going to stop the whiteboard and then we'll move back to. So as I said, I will offer you quite a few ideas, tools that hopefully will help you, whether you are a mentor or your mentee. That's just perfect, to really see how you can clarify those goals and how you can get some help in clarifying those goals. Whatever we think about goals, I always like this, remind ourselves about the approach that is really promoted by an organization called Mentor Click. And it's about remember to be real. And when we think about career goals, they always encourage us to be relevant. So their goals that you should think for yourself would be why? Why is it important? Why is it relevant to me? Experimental, so really about thinking about defining your goals in a way that would allow you to gain greater insight. Aspirational, so it's really about making sure that your goals really include and maybe express the aspiration that it should be about your development and growth. And learning-based, it's really obviously about that you want to express your goals in a way that would show you some desired, we call it gain of capabilities. So basically that you will learn something. It's a nice one of the kind of tools or frameworks that you can think of whenever you think about clarifying your career goals or maybe re-clarifying your career goals. However, I always start with the very simple exercise, which I always encourage, for example, of my clients to start and reflect with, and we call it the Four Quadrants. So I like to keep things simple, and whenever I think and work with someone who thinks like, I'm actually not sure what I want to do with my life professionally, I always say, listen, look at this and try to reflect what shows up for you. So treat it as an open document. And as you reflect, as you think about who you are and where you want to be, and think about those four categories: what I like, what I don't like, what I want, and what I don't want. So I always think about career goals, and I in a way that this is a process that involves two elements: look within and then look outside. So first, it's really about the reflection. And about thinking about your strengths, your capabilities, your drivers, motivations, facts that the things that you really know about yourself. And that's the step number one. And this idea, this framework, as we would call it, might be the first tool that might be useful for at least some of you. So what I like, what I don't like, what I want, and what I don't want. And after you start reflecting, you can then start thinking about, okay, now I have this set of information. what do I do with this? And we'll get to this stage in a moment. But first, this exercise in simplicity, in the reflection, looking inside and just thinking about who I actually am, what really is that I want, like, don't like, and don't want. A second exercise that I very often encourage people to do is a bit longer, and it might take a bit more time, but it's really, really rewarding. And this exercise is really a values exercise. So this is a set of few dozens of values that you can even Google if you need more. And then I encourage, for example, my clients and my mentees to work with me in this 5-step process. So pick those values out of this big set that matter to you, that are important to you. First, pick as many as you want to. In the second step, pick only 4 most important to you. And then start asking yourself a question, or asking our mentee a question: is there a theme? Maybe you have chosen 4 that fit into certain category. Maybe they are about others. Maybe they are about you. Maybe they are about family. Maybe they are about power, money, community. You will see. Is there a theme? Yes and no. Now, in the third step, think about, would you change any of those values? So you have chosen 4 of them. Now you have a chance to change and to swap them for something else. Would you do it or not? Then step 4, would you rank them? Is any of those 4 more important than the others? And step 5, now you have a chance to add anything. Would you add anything now? So you don't have to replace one of those. You can add 1 more value to your set. And then when you have a set of 5 or 4, depending whether you decide to do something in step 5, then we have a conversation. Which of those would be your superpowers in the Marvel movie? Which of those values that you have brought would you use as a superpower? Which one would you like to be the one that defines who you are? And then after there's a bit of a philosophical / pop culture question, we get down into really thinking about how this information that you have just gathered about yourself, how does this choice really inform your career direction or choices? So this is really exercise when we can think about how our values and values that are important to us can shape our professional or career choices. It's not the exercise that will, for everyone, determine the career choices, but it's a very interesting exercise to have an exploration and have a clarity about who I am, what really is important to me, what I value. And in this question about career direction and choices, very often I encourage all of us to think about which of those values do you need to have in your organization, in your job, in your current job, in your next job, which of them you don't need to have. So this is really a bit of an exploration to have a better clarity, because for me, the final element of this exercise is the one that very often I have found with a lot of people that I work with really, really useful. So how can you use this, for example, set of 4 or 5 values as a kind of a compass or anchor when you make your life choices or when you make your professional choices or decisions? So is this something you would like to reflect on when you have, for example, a moment in your career when you think about what should I do next? Or should I apply for this job? Should I take the other job? Is this something that really is an important element in your decision-making process? That's I don't say simple, but hopefully it is simple, or not complicated at least, exercise that can help anyone, whether you're a mentor, you can offer this to your mentee. If you're a mentee, hopefully you can either bring it to your mentor and share it with them, or you can do it even yourself. Now, the third one, before we start thinking about how we can use all this information, is the exercise which has I think 2 most important forms. One is called your perfect day. The other one is the interview, but I focus on the perfect day. So this is an exercise that you can do completely just on your own. or again, if you're a mentor, you can really offer this exercise to your mentee. So this is really an exercise that it requires you to find some moment in time or place when you know that you can spend some time just reflecting. I always say, listen, find a day that you like, a moment that you like, I don't know, get the beverage that you like, or music or food or anything, just that you know that you will be able to spend some time undisturbed, to spend some time really thinking about your perfect day in the future. And this is not really, oh, this is my perfect day. This is exercise in decision in detail, and it needs to be really detailed description. So it's really asking yourself a lot of questions. Simple questions at the first glance, but really meaningful. What time do you wake up? Where do you wake up? What's outside the window? How do you get to work? Do you work from home? When you enter your work, who is around you? Do you work on your own? Do you work with somebody? What do you do all day? What tasks, what projects do you work on? Basically, how do you spend your working day? Be detailed. What time do you finish your work? When you finish your work, how do you get, what do you do after you finish your work? How do you get home? What else comes to your mind when you think about your perfect day? It really is an exercise in reflection, but also in the visualization of your perfect day. And here the importance is that don't think about whether it's feasible, possible, whether it's mission impossible, whether you will do it or not. The invitation here is around just being fully with your imagination and really letting your imagination flow, and really either recording, sometimes people record it, sometimes people just write this down. The important of this exercise, the important element of this exercise is really to go with the full day from the moment you wake up, and what's outside the window, surprisingly, is also an important element, until the very end day of an element of your day. So you can obviously build questions like, who do I wake up with? Also a valid question very often. But this really exercise will offer you as a mentee, or maybe your mentee, a lot of information about what is really around the desires, the ambitions, the important aspects of their life. You might get really surprised what shows up for you, what kind of ideas, plans, ambitions you start expressing when you let yourself actually do it, when you don't think about limitations, when you don't think about, oh, this is not possible because I'm in this job and this is impossible to be promoted, or I cannot move, or all sorts of things. So all sorts of limitations that we usually put on ourselves when we start thinking about what's next for us. So this is another exercise which really, combined with those two previous ones, is really the heavy sounds very terrible, but it is really an intense reflection work. Work that will offer whoever is deciding to do those exercises a lot of useful information, a lot of important information. And if you are a mentor and maybe you offer those exercises to a mentee, what I always encourage is to say, listen, you will not have to come back with this spreadsheet and report exactly what you came up with when you were thinking about this. This is fully yours. This is something that you can just hide it from anyone else. We will just talk about what it means to you. The reason for me doing this is that I always want to encourage these people, and my mentees usually, or my clients, don't start thinking about, if I say this here, I will have to say it to my mentor or to my coach, right? So if there is something around maybe people limiting themselves while they think, we want to remove it. So that's why I always say, listen, this will be your darkest secret. I have a very weird sense of humor. I always say, listen, this is going to be your darkest secret if you choose so. So you won't have to tell me this. But I encourage you to do the work, to think, to write down, to journal, to record it, however you like. But collect all those pieces of information. Go wild in your imagination. Think about all those things, all those questions, because this will be really, really useful in the work that we might want to do around building your career goals, building your career plan. So that was the kind of the first, and very often for me, a crucial step in really thinking about what sort of career do I want to have, what sort of career my mentees want to have. It's really a lot of reflection and looking inside. And as some people don't really maybe like it, for me, it is really a crucial element of really understanding who I am, what motivates me, what drives me, because that really is a super important thing and super exciting thing to think of when you think about your life choices, especially your professional choices. But that was a lot of thinking and reflecting. And obviously, some people say, well, I need some framework. So the next two slides are really much more structured around, let's call it tools or frameworks that you as mentors or maybe as mentees, you can actually use in really actually redefining your career goals. So the first one is, I finally call it 6 steps to Epiphany, at least temporary one, because I know that from the experience, we know that our goals change and actually should change with time and experience. So the one has 6 steps. The first one is very, well, obvious and simple, self-assessment. So obviously you can consider, or somebody can consider hiring a career coach or mentor, or maybe creating a career profile, but career profile meaning really thinking about where they would like to be. So again, it's a bit of a reflection, thinking what I would like to do, what is the career that I would like to have. If that's something that is not coming naturally, you can start with identifying your top skills. Always look for strengths and resources first. So think about what are my top skills. Or here you can use the exercises we just gone through. So you can think about what are my top skills, what are my top interests, what are the things that I like, what are the things I don't like, what are the things that I want to have. This would all fit in the self-assessment. So really scanning here and understanding what do I really want and what is that I really don't want. And what is maybe something that I still don't know and have to figure this out. Which then leads us to a brainstorm. Brainstorming can have different options. You can have a career quiz. You can take a career quiz. There are a lot of tools online, some better, some worse, but you can try one of those. You can brainstorm career options. And what I mean here is that it's really tapping into community. And I will use our community as a very great resource of people and resources, and really ask questions about, these are my skills, these are my strengths, what can I actually do? What might be the jobs that I might be good at? If you have no clarity, or if someone doesn't have clarity, hey, I want to be a finance manager, I want to be a community lead. Because sometimes what we start with the ingredients. Hey, I'm great with people, I have great communication skills, I love helping others, and I also love Excel and reports. Now, what do I do with this? And sometimes you want to sit with this and think like, well, I'm lost. That's why you can start brainstorming with your mentor, or maybe with some other people that might be in your community like ours, like L&D Shakers, community thinking physically, maybe community on neighbors. Think about who else can actually help you brainstorming. Which leads us to the third stage, which is research your career choices, which might be for me linked with the brainstorming, because I always say, well, look at Dr. Google, as we laugh. But sometimes, very often, the ideas and the inspirations come unexpected when we start just browsing. So I always say, hey, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. Why don't we just look at, for example, LinkedIn search, when you type in the skill that you find most exciting and the one that you really are great at. Let's say communication skills, something like that. You just type in the job search and see what happens. So very often just exploring things like that, and maybe exploring career profiles by just searching them, you can actually start getting more clarity and some ideas and inspiration, not maybe about your final career choices, but maybe about the next steps, maybe about exactly the next element, networking and talking to people in the field. So very often we sort of miss this stage, or maybe we're sometimes too shy and we don't really know how to do it. And sometimes we just hate networking. But this is really one of the best ways of really, I would say, reconciling our ideas with the reality, networking as well, meeting others. So really great way to, for example, see that someone might be in a role that you would like. For example, someone is a, I don't know, a PR manager with your organization and think like, I think I can do it. I'm great at writing stuff. I'm great at communicating. And I always, when I work with people who are looking for new career choices, I said, why don't you just send a note to somebody if you don't know them and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing something like that in my career. Would you be open to spend half an hour with me over virtual chat or coffee and just answer some of those questions that I have, or maybe telling me your story? And yes, some people will never respond. Some people will respond and maybe say no, but some people will actually say yes, and you can speak with them. And that's for you the golden opportunity to really ask them questions. There are valid questions like, how is your day, typical day? What are your challenges in the job? What are the things that you love about the job? What would you advise me when thinking about actually doing this job? That is tremendously useful stage in the career goal definition and choices. And I really encourage you to do it. Yes, it can feel like I'm not really great at networking. First point of call, L&D Shakers. Tap into our network of a few thousand people, and maybe it will feel softer and maybe no more natural and less scary. But that really is an amazing, place to start, because it will allow you to narrow your selections. You will suddenly hear stories about the jobs and you think like, oh, this is not something I would like. Or on contrary, you feel like, wow, this is amazing. I would love to do that. So once you narrow your career choices and you think like this might be something that I might do, maybe that's my career goal, you can start and think about maybe job shadowing, which always gives us a perspective. So hopefully this is clear, but job shadowing is basically following someone when they do their job, right? So if you have a chance like that, for example, within the organizations that you work, that's again another data point, another opportunity for you to actually see what really the job looks like and what it feels like. And it will definitely challenge your idea of this job, right? So you will get the more insight about how this role really looks like and how it feels like on a daily basis, who do you interact with, what it really means. Great opportunity, not always possible. But if you have an opportunity like that, that's a great way of actually helping you shape your career goals and career strategy and plan, however you want to call it. If you don't have an option of job shadowing, sometimes what is worth trying is maybe if you can have an internship or volunteering or secondment. So finding opportunities for you to, as we call it, get your foot in the door, build your resume and network, because that's also very important, but basically taste the real thing. If you have always wanted, or suddenly you realize I'm great at maybe, I'm trying to think, yes, let's say writing stories, and I would like to work in communications, and you feel like, how can I test it? Maybe there's an organization that really is close to the, for example, the cause that you're really passionate about. I don't know, women's rights. So I work with a lot of LGBTQ organizations and say, hey, I would like to offer you my services. Would you be interested? A lot of those NGOs really are looking for volunteers. And this is an amazing opportunity to do two things: do something for the cause that you like, but also test your skills and test the reality of some of those challenges that you would face. Again, sometimes it is possible internally. When it's not possible, you can try to see if you can do it externally as well. And then the final thing, so obviously start the decision making. So the decision making of defining your career goals is really, for me, about listing pros and cons, looking at all the information that you have just gathered, whether it's just pure the reflection, or maybe this is also based on the, I don't know, speaking with others, collecting data from the markets, collecting data from job descriptions, your job shadowing, volunteering, then looking at all these massive, hopefully, data points, and think about, what does it really mean to me? What are the things that I've observed that I really like? And trust your instinct, follow your guts, I always say. Yes, even if you're a data-driven person, when you look at data, there's always a story there. So think about what this whole set of data means to me. If I look at this, if I've observed someone, go back to your why in a way, go back to what I would really see myself doing on a daily basis and thinking, I love it. I am really enjoying it. And initially, I always encourage everyone to think, if the job description or job title doesn't come to you, that's fine. Start with the activity. I would love every day to meet people, speak with them, help them with something, for example, right? So that's a good start. Or you can say, I would love to spend all day with, for example, spreadsheets and data, analyze them and produce reports. Completely two different career trajectories, right? But you didn't focus on the job title if it doesn't, at least at this stage, still hasn't shown up. But it's really about thinking about what you want to do on a daily basis, what you're good at, and what do you see yourself doing every day for at least the next few years. So that's one of the models, 6 steps to Epiphany. Probably there's some more formal name for that. The other one is 4 slides to Epiphany. This one is slightly different. This is something that I came across only recently, but I also like it, and I think it's quite useful for a lot of people that I've met. So this is really about thinking about yourself on 4 slides. We call it slide it out or map it out. I guess for the purpose of our session, the first slide is the key slide. So you can see that on the first slide, when you think about career goals, the task is to do 3 things. To identify your passions and your interests. So again, there's nothing going on without self-reflection. This is one of the most important things that you will have to do. To reflect, look inside and think about your strengths, your passions, your motivators, demotivators, and really getting to know you and being honest with you. Imagine your ideal scenario and be bold and ambitious. They are actually linked to me. So think about, I want to be CFO of the organization. I want to save people's lives. I want to be senior executive by the age of 35. Or I want to earn a lot of money. I want to devote my life to helping underserved communities. I want to, and then again, as I said, think about your ideal scenario and be bold and ambitious, remembering that you will not have to show it to anyone. But the key thing is to be honest with yourself. That is the most empowering thing that you will do. That is something that will definitely help you with your career goals. Because if you're shy, even externally, here, this is a chance for you not to be shy, because it is about your life. Think about this. You will spend a lot of years doing this work. So you really want to make sure you enjoy it. And it's really something that is tapping into some things that you are good at, that you like, that are your passions. And here I'm not talking obviously about the famous follow your passion and money will come, because that's not always the case. But if you know your passions, if you know your interests, if you know your strengths, and if you also know your limitations, this life choices and career goals will be so much more aligned with who you are and so much better defined. And it will really help you to make the career choices that you will really enjoy, that you will find as growing opportunities, rather than just thinking that this is really a challenging choice that I've made and I wish I hadn't made it ever again. And then once you have it, and it's never a finished process. So once you have those goals on the slide 1, you can go to slide 2, which is for me very much linked, obviously. You really go back to thinking about what skills you have already mastered. This is what I'm already good at, and what skills I really need to develop. So you just look at your skill sets. These are the things I'm good at. These are the things I need to develop, which then leads us to the 3rd slide, which is thinking about, okay, I'm thinking about skills that I want to develop, and then just list every development activity that comes to your mind that might help you reach your goal. Let's say I'm great with people. I have great communication skills. I have great writing skills. I write super stories, but maybe I'm not really good with, I don't know, data analysis. So then your development activity would be obviously something to do with, how can I learn to do data analysis better, right? And then again, you can think about different forms of development, and a lot of you, if not probably all of you, are actually experts in learning development. So you can think about what are the development activities that will help you develop the skills that you do need to develop. And that's slide 4, which is a tricky one, but this is really necessary, is thinking about your potential barriers in executing your goals and what might be your solutions. So in a way, it's not about going into anxiety state and thinking about the massive course scenario, but thinking more about what might be the barriers to overcome it. One thing, for example, that I meet a lot is that I would like to move into management position, but I don't have an experience. And if I don't have the experience, I cannot move to management position. So that's a potential barrier. And then you can start thinking what might be the solution to this challenge. But those steps number 2, 3, and 4 are really only going to be as useful as your first step. So coming back to what we discussed today, it's really about something I will be like stack record, looking inside and thinking about what are your passions, what are your interests, where do you want to be in ideal scenario. Don't limit yourself, be bold and ambitious. And as the top of the slide says, iterate the below as you go. So obviously what will show up for you as your career goal today on the 27th of October 2023 might be and potentially should be very different to what is going to be in May 2024. Because as you obviously know, and probably today career goals for you will look different than the ones that you defined for yourself a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, probably not longer because you're much younger than me. But those career goals change as we grow, as we experience, as we learn, as we observe, as we speak with others. So this model will always be a fluid model. But one thing will be always constant, which will be the reflection. You will hate the word, but it's really critical. Understanding yourself is nothing short of a kind of golden recipe to succeed in defining the career goals that are really aligned to who you authentically are. That is, for me, an extremely important element. So we covered, and remember there will be time for questions and answers at the end, and you will get the slides as well. So really, it was a bit of a fast ride through defining career goals, but hopefully this will give you an idea that yes, the reflection is the most important element, understanding who you are, understanding the strengths, the limitations, understanding the drivers, the ambitions, understanding your vision for the next few years, maybe understanding your perfect day, and thinking how you can use this information to start defining your career goals and keep redefining them when you feel it's needed or when the reality of your life really changes. And then some of those tools will hopefully give you some ideas how to maybe add more substance into your career goal, defining activities, maybe some inspiration for where else can you look for support. But if you also are a mentor, hopefully these tools will also give you some idea how you can help your mentees define their career goals and maybe redefine them, or if they feel stuck, maybe help them get unstuck. And the second part of today is really about mentoring, and we talk about mentoring, engagement, and progress. And here, as I said at the beginning, I think for me, the important thing is that I keep always reminding everyone is that let's keep things simple, because life is complicated enough. So if we keep some of those processes, or maybe those engagements and ideas simpler, that will be much more useful for a lot of us. So for me, when we think about career mentoring, engagement, and progress, I always talk about those 3 C's: contract, check-in, and celebrate. So what it really means. So remember that mentoring is a relationship. It's a relationship between you and the other human. It's a relationship that is constantly changing, evolving. It's a relationship, it's a two-way relationship. And it's a relationship that really should work for both of us if we are both in a relationship. Whether you're a mentor or a mentee, that doesn't really matter that much. So what I mean by contract at the very beginning is really to have the conversation, and obviously mentorship program has a framework, and you will get, and you probably get the training, how to structure it, what are the key rules, how often do you meet. This is part of the contracting. So whenever we talk about engagement or progress, if we don't really define how we work together, it will be much more difficult later on to keep the engagement, to monitor the progress. So that's why this element at the very, very beginning is extremely important. And obviously, a lot of simple questions like, what do you want to achieve here? How do we partner? So yes, some of the rules that you need, for example, how often do we meet? Who schedules the meeting, for example? But then how do we partner? And then think about you and your mentee, or if you are a mentee, think about what else would you need in this mentorship relationship. So it's really, again, about reflection and having a conversation that will set you both up for success. What is important for this mentoring to be successful? Very open question, which is very inviting, and it might give you, if you're a mentor, very interesting comments from your mentee. If you're a mentee, it's an opportunity for you to really share anything that is on your mind at this very moment that you would need. And this might be all things, really, because every one of us is unique, individual, and everyone will have different needs. But it's important to share those and have those conversations at the very beginning, be open and transparent, because this will set us up for those conversations going forward, and really will set us up for success, really engaged and really effective mentorship program. Because then when we move through the program and we meet once, twice, fifth time, second, sixth session, then it's about simple, just checking simple questions. How are we doing? How are we doing versus what we established at the beginning? Have your objectives or expectations evolved? So this is really a very important question. As you are mentors, you will observe your mentees. But if you're mentees, you may experience that suddenly you want to do something else. Maybe something else becomes more important. So that simple question is a very great opening to have a conversation about, are we still working towards what we established, or have we changed, or do we want to work on something else? And then a very simple question, how engaged do you feel in the process on a scale from 1 to 10? For example, someone says 7, okay. What would you need to move 1 up on the scale? So if someone says 7, what would you need to feel engaged and tell me that you're at 8? Very simple question, which is an invitation. It doesn't sound like you're testing someone or probing. It's really an open conversation just to have a check-in about where they are. And if you're a mentee, and if someone asks you this question, remember that it's an invitation for you to share what else is needed and how you're feeling where you are. And that is the process that is an opening for you to really hopefully express anything, just to make sure that this process really is useful for you as well. What else do you need at this stage? Again, an open question. Maybe they need something. Maybe it has changed since we met first time. Maybe there's something else that is needed. Very open, very transparent conversation that will allow you to check in where you really are, and you will hopefully be able to keep the engagement, keep the progress. It's really, I don't say it's really that simple, but here really about simplicity of those interactions, few open questions, assuming that we had this really great conversation at the beginning and we know what are the rules, what are the parameters, what is needed, how do we really want to work together. I always say, listen, it's a relationship, communicate and celebrate. Sometimes we don't think about this, maybe not too often, but celebrating is really hugely important in mentoring program. If you're a mentor, if you're a mentee, it doesn't really matter, but it matters for really the chemistry, and it matters for really sustaining the result and really helping the mentee, obviously, mostly here, to really appreciate the progress, to build their confidence, and to see themselves from a slightly different angle. So acknowledge and celebrate even the little wins along the way. Very often you would hear me asking questions, or someone says, well, how is it going? And they say that they share some positive things, which I always ask, what positive thing has happened since we spoke last time? And then if they share something, I would say, well, how are you going to celebrate this? Simple question. And initially people say, what do you mean? But try this question, try asking someone, if they share some good news with you, ask them, how did you celebrate? Or how are you going to celebrate? Ask yourself, how have you celebrated the last positive thing, a little win that you had in your life? And then tap into simple question to evoke awareness and clarify so if you're looking for this reasons to celebrate, it's about simplicity and helping the other person clarify how have you evolved since we started working together? Even if it's meeting number 3, things have changed. How have you changed since we started working together? What have you learned? What have you gained since we started working together? There's a great question which you can ask maybe later on in the mentorship program. What is now possible that was not possible when we started? And that's also the question to remember, not only when you're a mentor, but when you're a mentee, you can ask yourself this question as well. And I encourage you to do it. But here, really, this last stage of keeping the engagement and progress is about celebrating. It's about shifting their attention to what has happened and what has been positive. And how are you going to celebrate this? What have you learned? What am I learning? What are we learning? What are we gaining? And it's really, really, again, that simple. So remember about this, it's really about, It's really about those 3 things. Contract, so have a conversation, establish what is needed, establish how you want to work together. It is a relationship you will have for some time. Then check in regularly, really about where we are. How are we doing? How are your objectives still the same? Has something changed? How engaged do you feel in the process on a scale from 1 to 10? What would you need to move up? What else do you need at this stage? So be open and transparent. So before ask me anything, we have about 9 minutes. So really about maybe a bit of a summary, but it's really, I don't say again, very simple, but try to keep it simple. When we think about career goals, you will hear me this say again, start with the reflection, identify your top strengths, identify your top passions and interests, and identify your top motivators. And then look at the limitations that maybe you want to overcome. But based on your top strengths and passions and interests, think about where would you like to be? Being bold, being ambitious, thinking about the ideal scenario, and start there. Because then you can implement some of those tools that we mentioned, thinking, mapping your development activities, mapping the people you would like to talk with, narrowing the choice of the career, typing in the Google search or LinkedIn search some of the skills that you just shared and you thought these are the top skills I want to use in my job, and seeing what jobs comes up and then narrowing. But as you see, all those next steps always start with the reflection, always start with asking yourself some questions about who you are, who you want to be, what really is important to you and what matters. And then shifting to mentoring, engagement, and progress. Again, think about those 3 C's. Contract, have a conversation with someone, check in on a regular basis, and then celebrate. And then that conversation will probably happen all the time again, because as your relationship with your mentee or with your mentor continues, these are those conversations that happen and should happen all the time, because that will allow you to keep the momentum, to keep both of you in a way engaged in the process, and to keep your mentee, if you have a mentor, if you have a mentee in your mentor, really engaged, really appreciating the progress, and really being able to say, this is what I'm learning, or maybe I need something else, which will keep your mentorship program alive and your mentorship relationship alive. So that is the key, and that's always the most important element for me. But I'm going to shut up for a moment now, and then let's see if you keep, okay, so let's see. Few questions. So we have one question in the chat. Can you give a few tips for celebration of success personally with mentor, mentee, or with team? Well, this is a great question, because sometimes I ask, because celebration means different things to us. So if you ask, for example, if I ask you, Marketa, I'm using you, what would and you don't have to respond, but I would say, hey, have you celebrated? And you say, no. And then I say, well, are you planning? Yes, I will. But then I would ask you, what for you would be a celebration? For somebody, it would be going for ice cream. For somebody, it's something else. And for somebody else, it's something else as well. So that's part of my tips would be, I don't know, yeah, going for ice cream, to be honest, or buying another book, or maybe signing up for the course, or just giving myself a pat on the back. Again, it's really about having a conversation. How are you going to celebrate? What would celebration be for you? What would be the meaningful? Oh, I can see in the chat. What would be for you the meaningful celebration, right? So letting the mentee create the celebration that they want. We have some ideas in the chat: a dinner, spa, coffee. There you go. So you see, for this person, for Pravin, probably if I ask him about celebrating, he would come up with this list. Thank you for question. Great question, though. Any other questions?
Yeah, Rafal, question.
So let's go first, Pravin, and then Marisa, okay?
Okay.
Super.
So you spoke about values, right? Identifying your top values. How does one actually pinpoint values? Because I think the concept of values itself is so fuzzy, right? It is here. So how does one actually identify their top values? Does it change over time or it doesn't change? I was just...
Well, I'm a coach, so I would ask you a question. Does it change? Has it changed for you? Since you remembered, since you defined the values before?
Not really.
Okay, well, there you go. But maybe now, if we turn to the group, and you don't have to respond, you can just give us, do you think that the values that are important to you, have they changed over the lifetime that you had so far? Would you say it's a yes or no?
No.
Okay. Some people say yes, some people say no. The most basic and fundamental no, yeah. So it's very subjective. I think that we would all agree, right? As we grow, as we mature, some of us will revalue our values. Some of us will add into top 5. Some of us will replace some of them shift. So it's a fluid process. That's why for me, thanks for the comment in the chat, but it is really about again, personal thing. That's why I always say, well, look at this value spreadsheet now and then. Look at the value spreadsheet every time you need to make a career decision, right? And see, has anything changed? Or is the set that you defined a few years ago the same set? Or has it changed and it has informed your career choices in a different way?
Right. Thank you, Rafal. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. And Marisa?
Hi, so I'm referring to that stage on your slides towards the Epiphany, that stage where you know where you want to get and you are developing. You have to take specific actions. Sometimes those actions are studying or developing. Let's see, slide 3. Oh, here.
This is this one?
Can you go on the next slide?
Yes.
Yeah, slide 3, development activities. So, for example, training, university classes, books. I've been several years now stuck at that point where I keep on developing my knowledge and skills, and I keep on trying to decide and not deciding whether I should continue picking up many short courses everywhere that I love, or just take the plunge and do a proper master in something very specific, for example, behavioral psychology, adult learning, etc. From your point of view, how important is to have certificates that give us not only the knowledge, but the external credibility?
No, I have to be careful because it's recorded.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I will be and I'm always very honest, and it's on the record. I always say that look at if you have some idea of a job that you would like to do because of the knowledge that you want to gain, right? I would check in few places, what is really the requirement? Is the certificate requirement? Is the master's requirement? Or is the experience requirement? Because that might help you to decide which one really is the most important thing. Not the one that we want to do, but maybe if we say, I want to get a job, let's say, as a occupational psychologist in the company, right? For example. And then you start looking in the description of the jobs and they say master's in psychology. That's a sign that the master's is what you need to do, right? But if they don't say master's, but like knowledge of psychology or something, then you can just say, okay, maybe I don't need masters because the other elements are important. So answering your question is that I would say, depending what you want to achieve by this development activity, I would first check what kind of development activity, if any, is required by this dream job or this goal that you want to achieve, right? Usually it's a job, like, right?
Yeah.
So it's about this, because we know, we've seen that we have a lot of certificates, but actually then we realize that they don't even mention them in the job requirements sometimes, right?
Yeah, and we do it because most of us, we like learning and developing.
Yes,
ourselves,
which is amazing,
yeah.
which is amazing.
But it can be an excuse not to go for the real decision, I find, yeah. Okay,
you said that. But that's a great question. But yeah, really thinking about what would I get by doing this activity, and then checking which really activity is most important for this organization, for the employer, right?
Yes. Okay. So,
thank you for the question.
Thank you.
And okay, so we see, Marissa, there is a comment from Lee. Yes. And I would say, I love that, exactly. I love that the fact that you said we love learning, and it's amazing, never stop learning. And at the same time, let's just check which particular aspect of learning or what form of learning is required that will allow you to reach the goal that you want to have, right? Because, you know, maybe you don't need to do masters, but maybe you need to. So you can tap your learning power into this particular activity. We have 1 more minute, so maybe a chance for one more question. And by the way, I uploaded the slides in the chat. So if you want to, you can download them. So, but maybe anyone else, any questions, any challenge? And I will open the slides because if you want to, and I don't have a lot of social media presence, but anyway, at least. So if you want to connect and then ask questions or have feedback or anything else, if you want to, you can scan, because my last name is unpronounceable. So finding me is a challenge. You would need to learn. But if you want to, you can connect with me, ask questions afterwards, more than happy to answer. But when I will finish on hopefully a bit of a philosophical note. Carl Jung had this one great sentence when he said, "Who looks inside awakes." And for me, it's a beautiful quote that I use whenever we talk about career goals or life choices. Start with looking inside. And because that's always, for me, the fundamental knowledge. Because the more you know about yourself, the better choices you make, and the better you can react to the reality and to the changes that are required. And that's especially important when we think about career, right? You don't want to hate your everyday, whatever you decide to do. All right, so I'm going to stop recording, and I know that you need to go and enjoy the rest of your days, and it's Friday. And